Okay, welcome back to Accidental Ascension. And yes, we are in turn 41. We kicked off last time in turn. We were meant to be looking at turn 39, but fear not, all is not lost. I'll be able to take you through turn 40 and 39. And I have some images and things that I can use to tell the story of the last two turns. For context as to why those turns are difficult, we're about to enter a brief phase of the game where I'm delivering my orders through a sub. So um, I had to, at this point, leave home and be elsewhere, and to help take care of a couple of family matters. Someone kindly stepped up to substitute for me, and I was in the position where I'd get a briefing on the turn, I'd issue the instructions, they'd exercise them using their judgment, but within I'd basically make the big calls still, having set everything up. But at this point, we weren't across the discipline of getting them to save the turn files or anything like that. And the fact that a lot was going on at the same time meant that it was extra complicated. So um, let's talk through what I'll give you a narrative of what happened in turn 39, which is the turn you expected to be seeing. Then I'll take you through the major events of turn 40, which was a big turn. But even though we don't have the file, we have most of what we're interested in, which is the big battle results. And then we'll look at turn 41. So for the moment, just don't look at anything too closely. I promise we'll get there. So turn 39. Turn 39, negotiations with the Patalans had broken down. We were launching our attacks. But why did those negotiate? Well, those negotiations had already broken down, but the nail in the coffin was there was some confusion among the giants. And the giants, based on their discussions with me, had thought that I was already at war with Patala. So, thinking they were coming in to vulture a situation, the sneaky giants invaded Patala through this narrow corridor here. They poached a province with their god, who has now clearly fallen back. They moved in, they stole the salt plains, and then they got to the point where they besieged this fortress, and reinforcements coming in. Christine, the Raven of the Underworld, is there. They also threw some water boosters, so they bought a bunch of water gems and water boosters from us, threw them on in previous turns, threw them on a Scrati, a couple of Scrati, who I think they're up here somewhere, I'm not sure. They're either in this fort or this fort, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where they're firing from. Anyway, they fired off, as they suggested we do, they fired off some Wolven Winters to wreck the Patalan economy, and they hit 3 provinces. The fortress that they are going to try and take, the Patalan capital, I presume for income purposes, and they also hit, I think they hit Green Wall down here because it's cold. I think they may have hit all these provinces. Anyway, they hit a lot of provinces with snow, and then quietly sat there in chat saying absolutely nothing while the Patalans went absolutely nuts at us for remote attacking them before the war had officially begun. Now, like, under normal circumstances, fair assumption, Atlantis likes cold, so if a whole bunch of provinces near Atlantis on the border get hit by Wolven Winter, yeah, I would suspect Atlantis. But if Atlantis is A, telling you it wasn't them, and B, the other cold-loving nation is literally attacking you that turn, as in they have taken several of your provinces, including deep striking their god into your backline, maybe suspect them. Anyway, so I got called a truce breaker, a nap breaker, and all sorts of fun stuff. That was fun. And then Utgard eventually stepped in and at least owned up, and that put an end to that situation. But I didn't appreciate I wasn't even asked, hey, was it you, before there was announcements in chat that Atlantis has violated the NAP. The key, obviously, is Wolven Winter doesn't tell you which nation cast it. It's hard to know, and it is an Atlantean specialty. But Scrati with boosters can absolutely cast it, and I have sold Brute a whole bunch of boosters. So anyway, he cast it. He's colded, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think are all colded, this entire block, which makes this area all good for him to fight and thug and carry on in while hurting the Patalan economy, at least so the theory went. Anyway, he had attacked. So we set our attacks. We aimed to hit... he hadn't hit this fort at that point. We aimed to hit 130, 106, 88, and 77 all at the same time. So we were going to drop a thug on 77, we dropped a relatively small army on Deep Gorge Cavern, and then we sent a large army to Barmay. Why did we send a large army to Barmay? We figured if the Barmay was closer to the capital, it was a larger, more valuable installation. With Utgard having intervened in the war, we didn't want them to secure valuable land, so we were like, nah man, we're going up here to Barmay. And he accepted that. He accepted that he couldn't move on to Barmay at that point, and he instead was going to move on to Runia 133. So we set those attacks in motion to armies which are pretty much intact at this point, and I'll show you all those in a moment. And we were launching attacks and told Utgard we were doing so, and that he should mind his own business. Patala, yeah. Anyway. We're at war with Patala, and I'm not sure there's any going back from calling someone a truce breaker. Legitimately in chat at one point he thought that the Raven attacking the province, so the god attacking a province, was a scout. Now, when I think about it, that's not actually that insane, because the Raven has a stealth move naturally, and if someone had misclicked and control clicked instead of right clicked, it's possible an attack would have been launched. But the fact that on the same turn a province was taken up here is kind of a bit much. So anyway, and then we're going to get into turn 40. So turn 40 was the first turn of the war, and a couple of interesting battles here. So I'm going to take us out and we're going to look at those images of those key battles. Then we're going to come back and talk about turn 41, because turn 40 really was a very important turn. Okay, so this is an image that was sent to me of the first of the major battles by the person who was playing my turns for me. Obviously, while I may have missed the file, at least when the turn cycled, just so I knew what happened, this got sent to me. Which was good. It made me know what was happening in the turns, and meant I wasn't worrying while I was off doing more important things. So this was the battle in the south, which you'll recall was our lower commitment attack. We had 90 mainline infantry, 90 siege chaff longjet, and only 3 Ungercock to support it. So that's actually a reasonable number of majors, but short on the infantry and short on other supporting elements. What happened here is Patala actually sent their primary response force. Their larger response was in the south, whereas I anticipated that it would be in the north, because if you hold the north, you can ward that fort, and we'll show you when we go back to the turn. If you hold that fort, you can sort of ward off Utgard, you can protect your capital. It's a very important province, whereas the south I thought was less important, but they concentrated pretty much everything they had available on hand there, exploiting the fact that yogis are actually really quite mobile mages and units, and able to get to locations relatively quickly. So they sent in 33 yogi, a Nagini geared with gems, and a man-eater, their god, and some supporting troops. And then there's a massive PD dump here, 160, 170 units of PD. Maybe it was only 130, 140. Anyway, huge chunk of PD. And the theory here is the PD is a massive tar pit, and then the yogis sit behind the tar pit, communion up, and start soul slaying and slave minding, which is why there are some ice guards down here who joined his side, because they were being mind controlled from my side. So what happened in this battle is we threw up Stygian Rains, Wailing Winds, and the other Ungercock was just a Falling Frost caster, and our infantry advanced. Our infantry hits the giant wall of PD and starts slicing away at the hordes and hordes of monkeys. But while they're slicing away at the hordes and hordes of monkeys, the yogis are doing their thing. They're popping heads. And you can see that most of the casualties among my infantry, my mainline infantry, are accounted for by the yogis. Almost none of my casualties are accounted for by the masses of PD and all these units. Only 1 was killed by the god. 4 units were killed by crossbowmen, and some of them were long dead because the battle went so long that the long dead managed to get into range. So the PD didn't kill much, but these yogis were popping heads. But with Stygian Rains up and your infantry unable to kill my infantry, we started to chop through him. And what then happened is the combination of battle losses and the Wailing Winds starts to put pay to the situation, in that the Communion Master Yogis, who were actually quite low morale units, ran, as did the surviving PD. Everything ran. The Man-Eater ran. And they left a significant chunk of their Communion slaves on the field, and those guys were then killed. So we killed a lot of PD. we took a significant body of casualties among our mainline infantry, as in this is a significant share of the killing power of this force. It's about a third of the killing punch of the force. Most of our killing was done by either our infantry did a good amount of killing, the Ungakocks dropping Falling Frost killed a significant number of units, and then the Long Dead actually did a reasonable amount of killing as well, but that was mostly like I think swarm bugs and PD and crap like that. Anyway, they left 12 Communion Masters on the field and we killed them. So we took over that fort, occupied it, but this was not a super good exchange. This was a much better exchange. Now, mind you, I'm not saying the last battle was a bad exchange. 13 mages for 30-something infantry is, like, you'll take it, especially if we controlled the field. Sorry for the cut-off images here, but it is what it is. So here we had a smaller number of yogis patrolling, again, behind, like, a PD dump. Here we had a more diverse force. We had our devils, we had our a much bigger infantry corps, much bigger siege corps. This smaller number of Ungakok because we didn't need. Because of the way I was positioned, I figured the Southern Army was the weaker one and it needed a little more help. So I sent it an extra evocation Ungakok who was getting those 30-odd kills, dropping Falling Frost with water boosters and whatnot. This army only needed Wailing Winds and Stygian Rains. So that's the two Ungakok you see there. Here, what happened is, again, they tried to use a PD sort of base to lock us down. And what happened was the Devils jumped in the rear and killed all the Yogis. Just stabbed them to death with tridents, while the Ice Guards advanced and cut their way through all the PD. You can see here 20 Bandar warriors died at the hands of our infantry, and they killed nothing. They killed absolutely nothing, because our guys were running significant amounts of protection with good stats. Ice Guard was really, really good, and we ran over them. Again, what was left routed, but casualties here were higher because it wasn't the route that took them off the field, it was the fact they got backstabbed by these devils, who are proving to be very, very important. So we took that fort, and I think we cracked it. So that northern fort was under our control. We weren't the only ones having significant battles, though, and here we're looking at a battle on Phlegra. So Phlegra was under siege by Xibalba was under siege by Phlegra's main army. And Xibalba, who looked like they're back against the wall, decided, screw it, we are going to push these guys off. So, the Phlegran force was 2 Laestrygonian tyrants, fully geared, 4 oppressor generals, 3 Phlegran oppressors, 12 shackled mages, and then archers, helot soldiers, and there's about 120 assorted mixed infantry. You've seen this Phlegran army before in previous turns, so you can go back and reference if you need to. But yeah, 140, 160 units at least. But the real thing was there were 2 fully geared, fully gemmed Laestrygonian tyrants, and there were geared Phlegran oppressors, gemmed Phlegran oppressors. The Xibalbans came with frickin' everything they had. They had their hero grandfather Earth, they had 3 Bakarbs, they had 13 Ahas and 8 Itzobs, as well as this huge mass of Zotz guards and whatever. And as we've seen before, the Zotz guards jumped in and they died, but they died slightly slowly. And what happened in the interim is these Ahas had so many gems that they could use 2 Earth gems per, in the case of the E2s, or they could summon Earth power or whatnot. Either way, everyone geared up, and there was just a wall of elementals. You'll see there's almost no kills. There's almost no kills in this Xibalban army, but there's almost total casualties on the side of Phlegra, and that is because something like 70 gems got converted into elementals, at least. It was amazing. It was just a rolling tide of earth elementals primarily, but there were water elementals and earth elementals intermingled with each other. Now, the Phlegrans, for their part, sent out some elementals as well, and their tyrants went in with buffs. But the tyrants got surrounded by water elementals, and those water elementals just started beating down on them. And those multiple high damage armor piercing attacks means at this stage in the game, in the pre-Phoenix Pyre era, because we're not quite there yet, we're not quite in the Phoenix Pyre Sol Vortex territory, it's not enough to keep them alive, and they died. So there's a complete loss of the primary Phlegra army. They'll be able to recruit more tyrants, but 2 fully geared tyrants, all these mages, 12 shackled mages, 4 oppressors general, and 3 oppressors, to a loss of, well, realistically 3 mages. Huge gem expenditure and large troop losses, but much, much greater losses on the side of Phlegra. So that was a dramatic turn of events. The final battle, and I don't have an image of this one, is our raider jumped into a water province, and unfortunately there was a bunch of Patalan mages there predicting such a move with shark attack, and they might have been predicting, they might have been searching and carrying gems, but I think it's more likely that it was a predicted measure. Let's give them credit. And we got shark attacked to death. So we lost a big mage. I'll check whether he was twice spawned, because several of them are twice spawned and some aren't. And about 10 gems worth of gear, which is unfortunate, but we'll make it up. So it comes to that was turn 40. So we made significant gains. I'm going to jump back into the game now, and I'll explain what choices I made from there, asking you to... Alright, we're back. So I think that mage actually retreated to Deep Gorge Cavern rather than dying, which is a good thing. Anyway, so we had been positioned in Barmay 130. Our small raiding force had pumped straight through to take Kaban 106. It wasn't all of this stuff at that time. It was only a fraction of this. Most lizards were still here. And we were holding Deep Gorge Cavern, which hadn't quite been... which had been broken because it was only a palisade. So we decided to launch... we were sitting on Barmay and we could have stormed it. And I was like, I want to be gutsy here. So we talked to Utgard, who had occupied 133. And Utgard wasn't confident in their ability to hold 133 because they were waiting for all their screens to arrive. They'd attacked with their god and a communion, but only a small troop screen. Anyway, so they were like, okay, they'll take over the siege and their troops will be there to arrive and reinforce soon. And we're like, okay, that makes sense. I didn't originally want Utgard to get this fort, and I still don't want them to get this fort, but it was convenient because what it allowed me to do is, without exposing my flank, I just moved my entire main stack onto Patala and cracked it, because there is 462 odd siege strength in this now, and there was even more before. And there were basically very few defenders in it because the forces were all elsewhere. There's a bunch of mages in there. Anyway, Patala was cracked, which was really cool. So yeah, victory there. So that was our turn 40 maneuver. And the idea there was to deny recruitment, to put a lot of pressure. No one feels like they have the initiative when their capital is under siege, right? It's a high-value province, 27,000 population. It's important for recruiting cap only, so we're like, let's move on that way. So we just pulled that maneuver there while moving up reinforcements, consolidating. With the idea is what we really want to do is I was like, I want to take Deep Gorge Cavern, consolidate, and have these forces able to support each other, which I've done. So we then, last turn, assaulted Deep Gorge Cavern and Patala, and there we get into the events list for this turn and the chance to talk through turn 41. I apologise again for the way that went down, but the reality was when you're working through sub-players, even if you're issuing instructions and answering questions and then trusting their judgment, not every save file is going to be kept. I do have a lot of the save files from the period of time where I was doing this. I've checked forward a couple of turns. I'm recording them in a block now because I wasn't happy with the original recordings, especially when I worked out I didn't have the files, but now I've done it. What happened? It's turn 41. Okay, Earth Empowered successfully empowered himself in Earth. Okay, so Earth Empowered is a adept of the Silver Order with an Earth random. We've done this out of desperation because I had too many gems and no one was selling us Dwarven Hammers. We sent our one that Patala had lent us back to them because we are now at war. So we have empowered one mage in Earth to take them up to Earth 3, Earth 2 native, so with the Earth boots, we can now forge Dwarven Hammers ourselves. We can only make one every 2 turns, and that's only if we're not making anything else in Earth, but we can start making hammers, and we need to, because it's turned 41, and we need to forge some stuff, so we're going to make some hammers. And we've empowered ourselves in blood, so Zenantes here. So we got some blood slaves from Ulm last turn, I think. Anyway, and we've sourced blood slaves from wherever we can, basically, and we got enough to empower Zenantes to blood 3. That is important because that's enough for us to make a Bloodthorn, which is enough to boost us up to blood, and it also gives us a marketable good. I'm mostly concerned about the fact this gives us a marketable good which we can sell to people. We are Construction 6, and we can manufacture Bloodthorns. Did you think Atlantis was in the Bloodthorn business? I didn't, but now we are. So that's just nice. So we're forging our first one this turn with our miserly blood slave reserves. We teleported. Good. I'll talk about him in a moment because he's important. We've teleported a mage to the front. We've cast Pack of Wolves. So I have enough nature gems to do this, and this is to get wolves that are going to be patrolling these provinces here. We've cast some Wolven Winter, so Utgard was not going to pay to keep up this Wolven Wintering, and the reality is, even though they started it, we really need to keep it up. So every turn we'll be throwing some Wolven Winter, particularly against Patala, to keep it cold, to keep our troops in the fight and workable. Also, Nagas are cold-blooded, so his Naginis, Nagarajas, Nagarishis, and Nagas themselves should have problems fighting us in at least these cold 1 provinces that we've got going on. No luck on the magic site search, but we've got a little blood hunt province here. You've got a little couple of doggos, couple of wolves. Nothing like the massive piles of doggos that Wolfdad has. But we've got our little pale imitation wolfy province here with our entire. This is our whole blood hunting, and this is all our blood hunting regime will ever be. It will only ever be like 2 mages hunting. That's all it will probably be, unless we get super lucky. Actually, did we get lucky at the... Yes. We got one more random blood won by event. This Tungalik did a deal with the devil and got empowered. One sec, phone's ringing. Sorry about that. So yeah, we now have this random extra blood mage who is going to make himself a sanguine dowsing rod, and we're going to increase our... We're going to increase our blood hunting from 2 to 3. It's in percentage terms, it's a huge increase in blood slaves. Can you imagine 3 blood hunters? Who on this map could possibly have that many blood hunters going? I mean, Ulm couldn't possibly have that many. Bogarus couldn't possibly have that many. Abyssia couldn't possibly have that many. Xibalba couldn't possibly... Yeah, okay. So we're tiny in the blood game, but I'm proud of it, okay? Because we have no native blood access, and I just think it's exciting. And I've never used... This is my first go with blood magic, really. So, yeah, so we'll give it a go. So, 10 blood slaves. There was some battles. Looks like... Okay, so what's happening over in Xibalba is they are starting to push back the Flagrans. They killed one of our scouts. That's unfortunate. Oh, they have Watchers. Interesting. Watchers throw lightning and high protection statue units. Only one, but yeah, that's interesting. It's like a static, highly armored storm demon. So Xibalba is starting to push back out, and you can see they've gotten in Phlegra's backlines, they've reclaimed most of their territory, so they're contiguous again over here, and they're in Phlegra's backline, fully cutting off this Necromancer-controlled zone. So for all intents and purposes, this whole area has been lost to Phlegra temporarily. I expect Phlegra will bounce back because they're reasonably large as they recruit Laestrygonian tyrants, but Xibalba is certainly back in the game. Ulm attacked Bogarus. Okay, so the Bogarusian Ulmish war is clearly on. Bogarus is besieging this fort. I think Ulm is besieging another fort. And it's all happening. It looks like overall Ulm is gaining a territorial advantage. I'm hearing rumours of battles that are happening. In particular, I heard that there was a GC may have staled and lost an army that wasn't meant to be where it was, which is unfortunate for him. Stales are always unfortunate when they affect the course of wars, but we'll keep a very close eye on that conflict. And then there were 2 battles for us. The first was a battle in Patala, which was their first attempt to push us off the capital. We stayed still on the capital so we could break it. They sent back a small force with a view to inflicting significant casualties, I think. So what have we got? We've got one Guru. We've got a fully geared Moonvine Bracelet, Regen Ring, Boots of Youth, Hydra Skin Armor, Dragon Helmet, Vine Shield, Firebrand. Full gear and 2 Nature and 1 Earth Gem Nagini. Some Sacred Naga troops. And we've got Foul Vapors. So you'll remember I called that this was one of the response mechanisms that Potala could throw at us. Alas, we had our, we had our Naiad in place, ready for this to happen, so we revealed our Naiad this turn, and we had Zerpin's Blessing, which gives all your units Poison Resistant 10. Now, if we had not had Poison Resistant 10, I think this would have hurt a lot more than it did. He gem baits us in return, but hey. So this is clearly a small delaying force. The Yogi is scripted to retreat, I presume, after body etherealizing the Nagini, and the Nagini is then meant to survive a thugging, thug us out while Foul Vapors kills us. We advance, and then the Devils come in, and the Devils pick a fight with the Nagini. Now, the Nagini is up to Protection 27. It is ethereal, and it normally has really quite good defense skill. However, Devils have 2 attacks. They do 24 pierce, which means they can damage this thing reasonably reliably, and they have this armor negating poison attack as well. Well, the poison is armor negating anyway. Extra effect on damage, paralyzing poison. So, yeah. Still reasonably effective. Now, this guy can hurt our Devils, but our Devils are fire resistant 25, which means you're not going to do damage with the Firebrand. So it's only the Devil that's physically hit with the 20 damage of the actual swing that's in danger. 1 second. The phone's ringing off the hook. Anyway, so armies of Potala are routed. This is 20 gems, 30 gems, 10 blood slaves, so still 30 gems, 40 gems, 45, 55, 65. 65 gems of gear and an expensive chassis. It's now routed. Unfortunately, for all of its joys in life, it is not flying. So it's being stabbed. Some of the things are missing from ethereal. Some of them are getting vine shielded. This is why it would be really survivable generally. At this point, the Ice Guards have caught up, and I almost wish that they hit it because they have magic weapon halberds. So now it's shape changed. It's shape changed because it hit 0. But being broken is really messing with its skills, so it's not really going to hurt anything. But it has gained its Hypnotize, its Venomous Bite, and its Spit attacks. Does some more damage. Meanwhile, Foul Vapors is still doing its job even through poison resistance. So you've got to imagine the number of checks we're doing here is insane. So we do end up losing 34 of these Ice Guard, 8, so 42 Ice Guard. We lose 3 Devils to the Thug. We lose 7 Crossbows, and we lose our Forgiving Father too. The Forgiving Father got, I believe, magic dueled by the Guru. What a bastard. Guru, however, also died. So they traded a Guru for a Forgiving Father. That trade is probably in their favour. The Naga Chief died is nothing. So then the question becomes 42 infantry and 3 devils versus a 55 odd gem thug. Is that worth it? I'll let the crowd decide. I am happy to have taken that Nagini off the field. I'm happy with that. I think that could have done a lot of trouble, caused me a lot of trouble under different circumstances. So we had significant losses, but we killed something really, really valuable. It's a lot of gems, they're hard to replace. Then there was a battle in Deep Gorge Cavern where we stormed a fort. So this is a test of oh no, we didn't storm a fort, we were attacked. Oh, that's right. So we are storming a fort, and the Patalans decide to exploit the mechanism whereby if you break out and retreat the turn your fort is stormed successfully, you end up in another province. So all they're really going to do here is run. Yeah. Come onto the field and run. Oh, and he's foul vaporing me too. Great. Okay, so he's trying to give me a goodbye present. You can see all these water elementals. So the reason I asked those to be set up is so you'll see there's lots of, and I had flown in, I think at least one additional mage had flown in for this turn to provide extra assistance. The water elementals are in case the Maneater had a lab in that fort and was able to gear with full regen items and everything. An iron-skinned regenning Maneater is actually a problem. So we had air elementals and water elementals on standby to kill it, because those are good counters to it. Instead, what happened is our air elementals helped us kill the Naga infantry faster and minimize the damage Foul's Vapors cause. Now, still a gem bait, but couldn't really be avoided. We did kill the Foul Vaporing Naiad, which is a good kill, and we only lost 4 Clockwork Horrors and some gems. But we were then able to assault the fort with minimal defenders, and as you can imagine, with proper, with our gear, I don't think it even triggered gem use. Yeah, it looks like it didn't trigger gem use, because our guys are just throwing lightning bolt and stuff. Anyway, so we lost 1 infantryman and 1 long dead, killing it and taking the fort. So, we are now the proud owners of Deep Gorge Cavern, which is high on rest, but has a great gold mine anyway, and we have broken the Patalan fort. Other events before we go on to what the plan was, Wolven Winter hit Patala, plus unrest in Deep Gorge Cavern, which is why it's so high unrest, so yay. More unrest over in FOM, and, 744 free gold. Nice, okay, so that works out. And then we lost 2 scouts, and we breached Patala. So what are we doing now? So, we had a brief discussion with the person who was subbing in, and basically we had 2 choices. We could assault Patala and take the fight, or we could not. Now, we know there are mages inside Patala, and then there's a force here, Bandars and Yogis. There's a force up here, Bandars, and there's a force down here, mercenaries, Bandars, Yogis, warriors, the whole thing. And then there's a whole bunch of, there'll be Yogis over here that can make that in 1 turn. These guys can't. So, and there's a big force of Yogis down here, so when you retreat, there's no guarantee of where you'll end up. I guess those are actually mostly survivors, so a mixture of Yogis and crossbowmen who fled over here rather than there. So, yeah, sucks to be them. Now, I can take a straight battle at the moment, but here's the problem. There's a lot of Yogis in those forces, so the Soulslay Mindburn Communion's real, and I don't have anti-magic support yet. There's research going in soon, once we hit our immediate priorities, to get anti-magic support in. And we're also bringing in more Communion mages. All these Lizard Shamans are coming in to provide anti-magic support and as secondary protection from a bunch of other things they can do. For example, these have nature gems to help them swarm. They were brought in as a trap in case this province was raided. They were going to swarm cast whatever raided it. So we need bring in more astral to anti-magic, but until we bring that in, and even then we're vulnerable to magic duel, but if he hasn't seen it before, he won't have scripted it. He only had it scripted to kill the 1 astral mage we had on station. He doesn't know we brought this guy in, hopefully, because we have very, very limited supply of these guys. Anyway, so I think we're vulnerable. I think we're vulnerable to taking disproportionate casualties, particularly if we storm. If we're attacked and we're broken up, and then we attack and into the teeth of mages, and I'm imagining, 20, 30 Yogi behind the walls that will funnel us, it could be a real kill zone in that situation, because if he can just chaff that gate up enough, he can detonate heads all day long, and this infantry line that we have, which has just been our strength, our saving grace, will disappear, and we'll lose the momentum. So I'm going to trade away some time in exchange for some safety. This army is withdrawing to Keban. Why is it withdrawing to Keban? It's like, why would you leave that alone? So, we're spiking his capital. We have loaded up, and I had this guy ready to go just in case. When we started this campaign, I knew we might have to be mobile in an emergency. So we brought in wing shoes, and we transferred around some death gems. This is a twice-spawned Wind of Death caster. We didn't have pen items ready to go. I didn't think that one through. But he's going to move on to the capital, and we assume what's going to happen. He's going to sally and fight us to try and save his capital. Our Wind of Death caster will land, get a couple of casts off, and eventually die, but is twice spawned. So that's perfectly fine by me. The armor will just keep him alive slightly longer, enough to get his second cast off. So that's 2 gems, enough for 2 casts of Wind of Death. That's our trap. Now, he might not fall into that trap. He might not, and if he does, we've wasted some time, but it's worth it for a chance to really knock back these forces a bit. I mean, we've got the economic advantage at the moment. I'm happy to trade that while I consolidate, because I'm moving in a whole bunch more Lizard Shamans. Now, they're carrying replacement gems for a lot of the other mages, so we'll be able to reload, because we're running low. Like, the stocks are good in some cases, like they're good in the case of the Naiad, who's responsible for most of the reserves, but not in the case of others. So we'll pull back, we'll do a gem reload, and we'll advance if we can. Plus, we get to see what happens with the Utgard fight up here. I'm hoping what happens is there is a battle here, and Potala loses a force. But as long as we're in situ, Potala may collapse instead. So if we pull back, maybe they'll fight Utgard. Meanwhile, this force down here, we're going to keep mostly intact. We're going to bring some extra mage support up to merge with the primary force. And then a whole bunch of the others are just going to stay in place. While the infantry will move up, we're going to search this province. We're going to build a lab because we need the infrastructure. I don't think he's going to counterattack here. We are, however, going to send 2 mages in. Again, we've had bad luck so far, but we really want to take it. And the reason we want to take this province is because if we take 77, there's no retreat at 66, and there's no line tracing to 66 or 44. So any gems or gold in this province are forfeit. So this effectively raids, in terms of damage, it's 3 provinces worth of damage in one go. Very solid. So he'll either attack the capital, or he'll try and counterattack at Deep Gorge Caverns. You'll notice that we're only patrolling with a very, very little amount at Deep Gorge Cavern. The only thing that's patrolling is this guy, who will cast Stygian Rains around a nice big PD dump. Our PD does really, does fine, perfectly fine things with Stygian Rains up. Normally you wouldn't PD dump, but it's probably the last thing he expects, and it allows us to both concentrate and defend at the same time. Worth the extra gold that we had, in my view, or at least that was the recommendation of the sub, and I took it. Normally I don't PD dump, but the suggestion was made, and I tend to agree with it. For now, everything else sort of fades into the background. We're going to keep an eye on the Gathian and Abyssian situations. We're going to watch the Phlegron and Jabalban war, but really it's enough for us to know that those wars have occupied people. We have to really closely watch the Ulm Bogorushian war, because it's right on our border, but at the moment we're in a let's see if we can gain a decisive victory over Potala. We've already killed 30 odd Patalan mages. We've killed 1 or 2 big thugs. We've inflicted some significant troop losses, and Potala has lost their capital's besieged, Barmain is besieged, and they've lost 2 provinces, including a fort. Only one of them was particularly valuable, 2 astral pearls, and then no down here, but some gold from the mine down here. So they haven't lost a huge amount, but the economic advantage certainly lies with us. We'll see if they fall into the trap. If they don't, we'll recalibrate and plan an offensive again, even if that means we have to siege Potala down again. We're bringing more siege strength forward. So there's about 100 extra siege strength we're bringing forward in the form of crossbows, reinforcements, a few more devils as we're shipping forward. Logistics is really important to me, as you can probably tell by now, while we get our forging online. Our economy is in decent shape for the moment, so it should be able to sustain 1 or 2 turns of dancing before we resume a major advance. So, like I said, only aiming for 1 province this turn, falling back, consolidating, gem reloading, and then we'll advance again depending on what happens and whether or not Potala falls for the trap. So, rejoin me in turn 42 to see whether or not the trap is sprung successfully or not.